Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are jumping straight into, I think, one of the biggest paradoxes happening in business right now.
It really is.
On one hand, you have AI tools just everywhere. Every organization is pouring money into generative AI, specialized solutions. I mean, deployment is not the problem.
But the return on that investment is, for most companies, basically non-existent. Our sources paint a pretty dismal picture, actually. While all these tools are out there, fewer than 5% of organizations are generating any real value at scale.
Fewer than 5%.
Yeah. And put another way, that means almost 60% are reporting little to no measurable impact at all. They have the tech, but the transformation just isn't happening.
That's the adoption impact gap. And it's not a gap, it's a canyon. It suggests that all this talk about AI being a game changer is true, but something fundamental is missing when you try to get from, installation to actual benefit.
And that's the key insight, right? That changes the whole conversation. The constraint that's holding back 95% of organizations, it isn't the technology, it's the human capability constraint.
Hmm.
If you just drop these incredibly powerful new tools onto old traditional workflows and just expect people to suddenly think and work differently, you are going to fail. The human foundation has to change before the tech can deliver.
So that's our mission for this deep dive. We're going to unpack exactly how that top 5%, how they crack this code. We need to figure out why conventional training fails so spectacularly and how you build a system that turns AI from a cool toy into a real engine for business impact.
And you should really care about this because the stakes are just enormous. For the ones who get this right, the outcomes are frankly astounding. We're talking productivity gains that routinely exceed 50%.
15%.
Decision cycles going from days down to minutes. Operational processing times cut by 70%. That is the kind of competitive advantage we're digging into today.
All right, let's start with a foundational question then, because the term capability gets thrown around a lot. If that's the problem, what are we actually talking about? It sounds like it's way more than just learning how to type a prompt into a chatbot.
Oh, it has to be. The sources define AI capability not as one skill, but as an integrated mix of three things that have to work together. Think of it like building a house. You need all the parts.
Okay, so what's the foundation?
The foundation is technical fluency. This is the operational layer. Understanding the basics of how AI works, knowing what the right use cases are for your job, how to write an effective prompt, and this is critically evaluating the output.
Right, checking its work.
Checking its work, making sure it's safe and high quality. If that foundation is shaky, the whole thing just collapses.
So once that foundation is in, what's the structure you build on top of it?
That's the layer of what we call adaptive human skills. This is the new way of working. See, AI handles the routine stuff, which means people have to elevate their thinking. They need skills like creative problem solving, applying ethical judgment when the AI gives you a gray area, and really strong change leadership. You're not just doing tasks anymore, you're managing this augmented human AI workflow.
And the third piece, which sounds like the roof and the wiring, has to be the organization itself.
Precisely. That's the supportive organizational systems. This is everything from redesigned workflows, clear governance, so who's responsible when the AI messes up, to incentives that reward this new way of working, and a culture that makes it safe to experiment. Without these systems in place, even the best individual skills just wither away.
And you can really see the fallout from neglecting those systems when you look at AI maturity across organizations. The source material breaks it down into 3 stages, and it seems like almost everyone is stuck right at the beginning.
They really are. The vast majority are in the experimentation stage. This is, siloed pilot projects, some fragmented tool rollouts, a few scattered learning classes. They're testing things, which is fine, but they are absolutely not scaling anything.
Then you've got the next level up, a much smaller group, in integration.
Right. Here, AI is actually connected to specific workflows. You can see measurable, real efficiency gains in those pockets. So they're getting some value, but it's very localized.
And then there's that rare 5%. The transformation stage.
That's the holy grail. This is comprehensive workflow redesign. AI is embedded systematically everywhere it makes sense, and it's all supported by a deliberate, organization-wide capability program. It's part of how the business runs.
And the single biggest thing that keeps companies stuck in that first stage, in experimentation, it comes down to this massive failure of traditional training. Sending someone to a week-long course, it just doesn't work.
No, it's what we call the transfer problem, and it's well documented everywhere, not just in AI. Studies consistently show that fewer than 15% of old school learning programs lead to any kind of sustained behavior change back on the job.
15%.
And with AI, the problem's even worse because you're not just trying to transfer knowledge like facts, you're trying to build new judgment capabilities. Comfort with ambiguity, the skill to manage an AI output that might be wrong. If the job itself hasn't been redesigned to use those new judgments, the training is basically useless.
And the cost of this capability gap
Mm.
is, it's just staggering. It's not just about paying for software licenses you don't
Oh,
use.
it's so much worse than that. Industry research shows pretty consistently that 70 to 80% of AI initiatives fail. And they don't fail because the algorithm wasn't smart enough. They fail because of these human and organizational factors.
The lack of readiness, poor change management.
Exactly. All that investment is just wasted.
And this is creating a productivity divide that is going to define markets for the next decade. The companies with weak capabilities, they see maybe a 10% gain. But that 5% who invested in the human side.
They're seeing 40 to 60% improvements.
Wow.
And that difference creates what we call capability debt. While your competitor is reaping a 50% productivity boost, you're so far behind, it becomes almost impossible to catch up. You're just stuck fixing your broken initiatives.
And beyond the balance sheet, there's this impact on the individual employee, which to me seems like maybe the most dangerous long-term cost. We're seeing a lot of anxiety around this.
Absolutely. It creates what researchers call technostress. I mean, imagine being told your job now depends on this super powerful but sometimes wrong new tool that you don't really understand or trust. That creates frustration, anxiety, and it kills job satisfaction.
We've all had that feeling, right? When a mandatory new system rolls out and nobody knows how to use it properly, it's just, it's toxic.
It is. And if you only focus on automating tasks without upskilling people, you risk de-skilling them. The employee just becomes a reviewer of AI outputs instead of a strategic thinker. The goal has to be augmentation, elevating the human, not just automating the task.
But the flip side of that is so powerful. When employees do get that robust, targeted support, they feel more confident, more motivated. They start to see AI as a partner that empowers them, not a threat that replaces them.
Which brings us to the strategic imperative. If you want those massive gains, you have to completely change where you start the journey.
And the usual starting point, let's do some generic training for everybody, is just completely wrong.
It's the biggest waste of time. The critical shift is this. Do not start with the tool, start with a value. You have to identify specific value pools first.
What do you mean by value pools?
The areas in the business where AI will deliver the fastest, biggest return, you find those, and then you redesign the workflows around AI to capture that value. Only then do you figure out what skills people need.
So find the prize, redesign the entire process to win it, and then train people on the specific new skills they need for that new process. It makes perfect sense, but it means leaders have to be willing to tear up how things have always been done.
That's the hard part. But the results, I mean, they speak for themselves. The sources detail this amazing transformation at a European retail bank. They picked lending operations, a huge value pool, but one that was notoriously slow and expensive.
What did that look like before?
The before was a loan approval process that took days, sometimes weeks. It was full of manual checks by loan officers, tons of paperwork. It just couldn't scale.
And the redesign.
They completely rebuilt the core workflow around an ops AI agent. The AI did all the initial validation and plausibility checks, and the loan officer's job was totally redefined. They became the manager of the AI handling exceptions, dealing with the complex, high-risk cases the AI flagged.
So their training was only on those specific new behaviors.
Exactly. Super focused. They learned how to validate AI outputs and manage the new escalation process. They weren't sitting in a class on the history of AI, and the results were just incredible. Productivity up over 50%.
Wow.
Manual processing time down 70%. And those approval cycles, they went from days down to under 30 minutes. That's real value because they started with the workflow, not the training course.
That just perfectly underscores why one-size-fits-all training fails. A loan officer needs something totally different than an IT developer or an executive. You need role-specific pathways.
You do, and the sources break them down into 4 key archetypes. Let's start at the top with the shapers.
The executives and senior leaders, let's call them the visionaries.
I like that. The visionaries. Their job is strategic. They need to understand the market opportunities, the risks, and they have to model the behavior they want to see. They need enough fluency to ask the right questions and steer investment, but they do not need to be prompt engineers.
The focus on modeling behavior seems key.
It's crucial. A big consumer goods company realized this. They didn't just give their leaders a PowerPoint deck. They put them in immersive labs where they had to practice using the tools and then share what they learned openly. It sent a powerful signal that learning is a continuous journey.
Okay, next up is that critical middle layer. The managers, the leaders. They're probably the single biggest predictor of whether any of this works. We can call them the coaches.
That's perfect. The coaches translate the vision into what the team does every day. They need change management skills, they need to know how to coach their people through this, and how to redesign their own team's processes. They're the first line of defense against that technostress.
There was a great example of a tech company that was struggling with low adoption from their engineers. How did they use the coaches to fix it?
They realized the engineers weren't resisting the tech, they were resisting a top-down mandate. So they focused on upskilling their managers first, gave them fluency in Gen AI, but more importantly, in empathetic change management. The managers then led their own teams in these low-stakes adoption sprints. It created a safe space to experiment.
And that manager support was the key.
It directly led to way higher adoption, confidence, and motivation. It completely turned things around.
Then we got the transformers, the deep process owners, the power users. I'm thinking of them as the architects.
The architects, yes.
Yeah.
They are the change agents. They need that deep process knowledge, creative problem-solving skills, and the ability to facilitate the actual redesign, like the team at that retail bank. Their training has to be hands-on practice, not theory. They make the technical possibility an operational reality.
And finally, the largest group,
Yeah.
frontline contributors, the vast majority of people using these tools day to day.
Their training has to be 100% practical. It's all about application. Prompting for their specific daily tasks, critically evaluating the outputs they get, and feeling comfortable experimenting.
And there was a pharma company that did this at massive scale.
They did. They segmented over 100,000 employees and gave them these tailored hands-on simulations for their specific jobs. And that hyper-focused approach took their AI tool adoption from 20% to nearly 90%.
But none of this segmented training or workflow redesign can work unless the leadership is completely visibly committed. The executives have to model these new behaviors themselves.
The commitment has to be undeniable, but even beyond that, you have to proactively manage the emotional side of this, which is where so many of these transformations they die.
You mean addressing the skepticism, the fear that this thing is going to take my job?
Exactly. AI adoption triggers all these complex emotions. You have to engage with those concerns directly with empathy. And that's where psychological safety becomes non-negotiable. People have to trust that they won't be punished for pointing out when the AI is wrong or for an experiment that fails. They need explicit permission to learn.
And that trust becomes the fuel for making the change stick, for moving beyond just training an individual to changing the organization itself.
Because if you want these capabilities to be permanent, you have to embed them in your systems. That means redesigning job roles to officially include AI responsibilities. It means changing your incentives to reward experimentation. It means putting AI fluency into your performance reviews and your promotion criteria, just like that bank did.
So the AI-enabled way of working literally becomes the path to getting ahead in your career.
It has to be. And because AI moves so fast, learning can't be some annual event. It has to be continuous, just in time, embedded in the workflow. You move from one-off training events to creating things like AI centers of excellence that provide constantly updated resources.
Okay, let's wrap this up by circling back to impact. We built these great systems, but if we're measuring the wrong things, we'll never prove the value. What's the big metric trap people fall into?
The trap is measuring the easy, passive stuff. Training completion rates. Did people like the course? How many people logged into the tool? That only tells you if someone clicked a button, not if they actually learned anything or created any value.
So we need outcome-focused measurement. We need to track the behaviors that actually drive the business outcome.
Precisely. You should be tracking the depth and variety of AI use. Are people just using it for simple summaries or for complex creative tags? You track the quality of the prompts. You track how many new use cases are being generated by the teams themselves. And most importantly, you track the real efficiency gains in those redesigned workflows.
That's the link. That connects the investment in people directly to the financial return.
It does. A financial services firm did this brilliantly. They didn't just track that 90% of their staff used the new GenAI tool, they tracked that 98% of learners generated viable new use case ideas for their own departments. And that 85% reported using it more frequently and in more applied ways on the job.
That's concrete evidence of a capability shift.
Exactly. It's linked directly to future value, not just a high score on a quiz.
So what does this all mean for you, our listener? The imperatives here are crystal clear. Stop with the generic training. Start with your high-value business pools. Design those systematic, role-specific pathways for your visionaries, your coaches, your architects. Lead from the front, build trust, and measure what actually matters. The business transformation, not the attendance sheet.
The AI-enabled way of working isn't some far-off future concept. It is rapidly becoming competitive table stakes. An organization's ability to build this human foundation is what will determine whether they capture the full value of AI or if they just stay stuck in that frustrating low-impact experimentation phase.
The technology window is wide open for everyone right now. But the window to act systematically to build this human foundation is narrowing fast. So the question every leader is facing is no longer if they should invest in AI capabilities, but how quickly they can make the human investment required to get from simple adoption to real, lasting business advantage.
That strategic focus on human skill transfer, that is the one thing separating the 5% from everybody else.